All right, looks like we are live on YouTube. So thank you all for joining tonight, this afternoon rather, the Kansas City Mass Movement meeting with the KC People's Agenda. My name is Justice Gatson. I'm an organizer here in Kansas City. I'm a social justice doula. I'm a community health worker. And I'm helping to facilitate our meeting today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going live from YouTube today. We want to apologize for any. I had some tech issues and couldn't go to Zoom, so been moved over to YouTube. So I apologize for any inconvenience that may be causing people. Let's see. If you need, let's see, ALS, there should be 3 dots on the bottom of your screen that you can press on so that you can get um oh, what is the word I'm trying to say? The transcript seen. Please let you can acknowledge or to send a message if that is happening for you. And I would like to go ahead and turn things. I'm sorry about that. I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Brandy for land acknowledgement.
I'm sorry. Um, uh, Real Justice Networks and Red Handed Warrior Society of Kansas City acknowledges the Mississippians, Missouri, and Kansas tribes, the Osage Nation and Wichita Confederacy, and the ancestral land rights of Choctaws, whose land we occupy.
So thank you for giving us acknowledgement of those peoples who were driven off of the lands that we now occupy and the lands that we are on. We want to always remember them and to remember their story. I want to just tell you all a little bit about KC People's the KC People's Agenda Coalition. We have been working together for several months now. This is a collective of Black and Brown led organizations across Kansas City who came together to build more solidarity with Black and Latinx communities in particular. We wanted to create a space for all people of color who are fighting all kinds of social injustice and people who are actually who have the answers to a lot of the problems that are plaguing our communities. And so we are working together. And one of the things that we are doing is trying to have an impact on our city budget. We've heard a lot about measures to defund police across the country, local communities who are deciding that their tax dollars are better spent providing actual resources that the community can use, getting away from punitive measures to more restorative measures in order to build strong communities, in order to do all the things that we say we care about. So that is why we're together. And we are working with our allies, who are taking our lead on this and on the things that are important to our communities. And they're actually working with us in a way that is what I would consider different from the past. And so this is a really unique space. This is where you're going to meet people who are really doing the deep organizing in Kansas City. You're going to find those organizations that you can link up with and do volunteer work for, or just find out more about these organizations and how you can support them. So speaking of organizations, and especially those that are really deeply connected in the community and really doing this work, I want to bring on my friend Dev, my sibling, my brother, to talk to you about the organizations that he's involved in and the work that he is doing. And oh yeah, by the way, I came on talking. I didn't even tell y'all about me. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you. All right, Dev, kick it to you.
Hey everybody, my name is Devin Hersey, he, him, his. I normally change my pronouns on Zoom. I have to do it every time I need to adjust my settings or something. But I am calling in from Columbia, Missouri, but I do represent Blackout Kansas City, and Kansas City's affiliate of the Black Treatment Advocates Network. So both of these are HIV advocacy organizations in large part. Blackout KC is focused on the holistic health needs of Black LGBT people in the Kansas City area. It's kind of unique in that way because there's not really a lot of Black leadership in this area, especially when it comes to LGBT health and HIV prevention and care and treatment services, those sorts of things. And well, I'll just say Blackout was really founded, really focusing on Black gay men, even though we're really concerned about the health and safety of all Black people. BTAN, the Black Treatment Advocates Network, that's a national organization. Our affiliate really wants to focus in on the health needs of women and people that Blackout didn't form with, communities that weren't like centered in the creation of Blackout. So we want to make sure that nobody's being left behind in the HIV response. So some of the work that we've done, I'll start with the primary services that Blackout offers, and that would be HIV prevention and PrEP. So we've had a lot of success when it comes to PrEP, especially serving Black gay men in the Kansas City area. And during COVID, the city, I'll say, has struggled quite a bit with reaching people, reaching those who are in need of PrEP and who are at risk of HIV, because people haven't stopped having sex. I guess the health department really didn't consider that. So when the city has reported 0 new PrEP starts, Blackout has reported like 30 among Black gay men alone. And so that just goes to say that what we do is effective and needed, because Black gay men are, of course, the most impacted community when it comes to HIV incidents. And if you know of anybody who might be interested, you can reach out. Justice knows how to get a hold of me, but I can help to make Blackout more accessible within this network. The other thing that I wanted to speak about is BTAN and some of the success that we've had. We really founded and started organizing just as the pandemic was starting. Give me just a second. So we were planning this really big in-person meeting, and the very next day, the city shut down. So that's about the timeline that BTAN has been really active. But what we were able to do in that time is we hosted this really well-attended town hall. I don't know if many folks know out there, but the federal government has announced this plan to end the HIV epidemic, and that was before COVID hit. And there really hasn't been a whole lot of success in the area of ending the HIV epidemic. the entire state of Missouri was identified as a high priority in terms of ending the epidemic because of the potential for us to have what they define or what they refer to as an outbreak. And that's a function of access to healthcare and some of the risk factors that exist within rural communities, as well as some of the disparities that we're seeing within our larger urban areas, which are primarily Kansas City and St. Louis. Excuse me. So we've really been pushing back to make sure that community is considered within the formation of these plans. What happened initially is the health department kind of decided that it was time for them to reveal what their strategies are that they've been pushing, and they really did not engage community at all during the planning process. But community engagement is so loosely defined that informing us of their progress is considered community engagement. So we've kind of just had to stay on them, push back, complain quite a bit, use PR strategies rather than direct action, civil disobedience. So yeah, the plan is just to keep a spotlight on them and let them know that we are watching, we are concerned, we are not happy, and that a lot of their strategies are recycled, things that have already been done and have not worked. And then similar to justice with this participatory budgeting effort, we have to guide them toward strategies that we know work and organizations that we know deserve funding and need to be funded. So we are in the process of creating programming that is specific to women, to Black women. And we are hopeful that we'll be able to work with Justice a little bit more on that. But the majority of our membership at BTAN is Black women. So we figured, that's where the need is. A lot of the funding is usually goes toward Black gay men. It's very gendered in that way. And I think that that's really in response to the high incidence that gay men experience. But that's not to say that there's not a need for Black women and for people who do not identify as men. So there really is a broad summary of the work that we've done, but I guess I can open it up to any questions if there are any.
I do have a question. So how much funding currently is BTAN or Blackout getting from our city?
So BTAN is getting zero funding. So we're working with, BTAN is working with Blackout. Also, it's like a fiscal sponsorship type of relationship, even though we're part of a larger national network that could also serve as a fiscal sponsor if we needed them to. But we're not funded at all. We get some overhead, we get some support in terms of like printed materials and organizing and that sort of thing. And Blackout receives zero funding from the city, but Rashawn, our executive director, is very savvy. He kind of came out of the Ryan White system, which is the federal funding that goes toward HIV in CDC funding. So he kind of knew the landscape and anticipated that there'd be a lot of strings attached to receiving that funding. So let's not make Black people dependent on this federal funding infrastructure, because we don't want that kind of relationship with the health department just yet. So if we are considered for funding, it's going to be at least a little bit on our terms.
Thank you for that. It really is some caution in there, right? Because I'm thinking about Mama Hakima at Uzazi and her post recently about doulas fighting for Medicaid to pay their fees. But then what does that really mean? the state being more involved, potentially having regulations that would be a potential barrier to doulas who are doing this work. Like, there's a lot that comes in when we're talking about receiving funding. And I think that in those requirements, whether it's city funding or state funding or whomever, there can be those barriers that have prevented some of our work. But as you said, I do know Rashawn is very savvy, and all of us in this space have been doing work in very unique ways and in very creative ways, so that we aren't tied to a system with some things in there that we fundamentally do not believe in and agree with.
Can I give you an example?
Yes, please do.
So broadly speaking, it's important for us to create the demand. They need to demand services that actually work for Black people. And if they want services that work for Black people, they will find a way to work for us. That's kind of the overarching philosophy. But for example, I mentioned ending the HIV epidemic. That's a 4-pillar system or a 4-pillar proposal. But pillar number 4 is, it refers to quickly responding to what they refer to as clusters. So clusters are identified using this tool called cluster detection. And what that means is that when people who are newly diagnosed or switching treatment go to their doctor, have their labs drawn, their blood work drawn, that blood work is sent to the CDC for a second round of testing without the knowledge or consent of people living with HIV. That means that they're taking this blood and grouping people into clusters, which is basically they can tell who has a similar genetic profile. It's phylogenetic grouping of people's HIV genome. And that's sent to the CDC anonymized. It comes back to the health department grouped and then de-anonymized and used to enact prevention efforts so that they can really target their prevention tools and interventions. The problem is, in the state of Missouri, the law requires that the health department provide the prosecution with any and all surveillance information if someone is accused of exposing a partner to HIV without disclosing their status first. And that carries a penalty of up to 30.5 years. And we can imagine who that impacts. The same communities that are highly at risk for HIV, which are Black gay men, Black women, Black people. So it's a little bit dystopian that they're using this phylogenetic data to group people into clusters. And then they have to give that data over to a prosecutor. That's just the dynamic. That's something that we need to push back with when it comes to ending the HIV epidemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other questions for Dev?
Yeah, I have one. Thank you so much for sharing all this information, Dev. I would be curious to know, in Kansas City, what are some of the contributing factors that are kind of overlooked, whether it's housing, access to healthcare, things like Medicaid or Medicaid expansion, if that makes sense. What are these other things that we oftentimes don't think about in our city? I'm from Joplin, Missouri, so I know that HIV and AIDS has been very prevalent here and not spoken about, and that has its own landscape compared to say a place like Kansas City. So I'd just be curious to learn from you on that.
Yeah, so you mentioned some really important things. Access to healthcare. It's all really a function of access to healthcare in a lot of ways, because when someone is diagnosed with HIV and they are in care, it takes them typically about 3 months to achieve an undetectable viral load. And at that point, it's impossible to transmit the virus sexually. But being in Joplin and all the space in between Kansas City and Joplin is primarily rural, there's risk associated with a lot of rural communities. Including intravenous drug use, substance use. We're in the middle of an opioid epidemic. I read one article recently that referred to COVID the opioid epidemic and HIV epidemic as a syndemic, which means that we are experiencing multiple different epidemics at the same time, and they're kind of overlapping. So the term that they used was a syndemic, and they're all following a very similar orientation when it comes to the social determinants of health. They're all impacting a lot of the same communities. And, access to food and housing, anything that is going to make it more challenging for someone to use or even desire to take a treatment regimen regularly, anything that's going to disrupt their daily routine. And then in terms of risk, we don't talk enough about sex work. And that's another area where intravenous drug use comes up. And then couch surfing, people who are, dependent on another person who, we don't know if they're abusive or if they're really capitalizing on that power dynamic. But just anything that would influence someone's ability to make autonomous decisions for their health. Also have to think about young people. There's the power dynamic there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So many important points. I'm glad you mentioned sex work. That actually is work for folks who think that it isn't. Any other questions for Deb? Okay, all
Go ahead,
right.
Brianna.
Hey,
Oh,
I have
go
a question. So I've heard that HIV, Hep C, and tuberculosis, like the biggest source of those is the prisons because people are not being tested or taken care of or anything. Do you by chance know like if there's like a good, concise informational thing about that? I was just kind of hunting around online and I found like the World Health Organization study on it, but it's like 5,000 pages long. And if not, maybe that's something we could talk about sometime in the future.
So I used to serve, I just finished my term serving on the CHAC, which is the CDC and HRSA's advisory committee. I remember seeing a really good presentation by a researcher who works within the prison system. It had to have been at least 2 years ago. I will see if I can hunt that person down. But if I recall correctly, I think if they're saying that there are high rates, it would be kind of like the aggregate, like all prison systems put together, as opposed to, because I think they're like relatively low risk, but when you consider all of them together, it's much higher. But I'll try to look into that, Brianna. I have your email.
Okay, and I know how hard it is to get accurate data about anything happening in the prisons. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So thank you, Dev, for enlightening us. And if other questions come, just put them in the chat. Right now, I'll give an update for Real Justice Network. As y'all know, we are in the middle of our Kansas City Black Mamas Day bailout. And just kind of want to talk to you about what it is that we're doing and then let you know how it's been. So for this bailout, we decided that, Real Justice Network, many people may not know, we started out as a group of people, protective parents, who were losing custody of our kids to our abuser. That's how we started out. And we branched off into doing all kinds of work involving social injustice because the intersections with the work are just everywhere. And so this year, Our bailout focus and centers around supporting survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. People who may be incarcerated, um, oftentimes Black and brown survivors are charged or arrested and charged along with their abusers, for simply defending themselves. Other things happen where, you know, other agencies may get involved if there are children involved. And we know that Black mamas lose their children to the state often, in some of these situations. Sometimes they get them back. They take them through all kinds of hoops with getting their children back. And then sometimes they don't. Sometimes they are actually adopted out of their home. And so we wanted to call attention to sound the alarm on this injustice that's been happening, because it's not just happening, you know, in some state. It's not just happening in California or DC. It's happening right here in Missouri. It's happening in Kansas City. It's happening over at Clay County. And so we want to sound the alarm on that, and we want to support and show our support for survivors. So, and because we've had to do things differently because of the pandemic, most of our events this year have been online, they've been virtual. We've had a few things that we've done. On last Saturday, we kicked off our events on social media. I'm sorry, on Sunday. And then on the 4th, we had an event where Black survivors shared their experiences with dealing with law enforcement, with incarceration, or even the threat of incarceration. We had also a panel discussion on the 5th that talked about the impact that the state has on families when they take children away. We had a social worker on. We talked to 2 parents who were at various stages in their cases and situations with the state. And that was a really, really good event. All of those, we have links to the videos that you can go on our Facebook page, Real Justice Network, REALE Justice Network. You can find those there. They're also on YouTube. Now, yesterday, I did a session with Ms. Stacy, who is a Mary Kay consultant. It was entitled Bruised but Not Broken. We wanted to talk about, you know, people in situations, you know, get scars and they use makeup to try to cover them. But we talked about how we really, really, really need to work on ourselves, especially those of us who are survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, and that no amount of covering can heal that. We actually have to work on that. And so getting ourselves into therapy, actually taking the time to do self-care and soul care and healing is really, really important. And we deserve to do that. As a matter of fact, this movement requires that we take care of ourselves. And so that's something that we did yesterday. All the proceeds, well, some proceeds from any sales from that will go to the bailout. And tonight, we are having our annual Word to Your Mother Poetry Slam. I am really, really happy that Imban is going to join me to help facilitate that space. It's going to be from 7 to 8 p.m. It's virtual. Please, please, please join us. And then, of course, tomorrow is Mama's Day. So we're just celebrating all mamas everywhere, no matter where they are. We're going to be having follow-ups to our work coming forward, because we don't ever just do events to have them or do an action just to do something. We are really, really working intentionally on some real cases that you can join us and support. We're going to really, really need your support coming up over the next several weeks. So, the bailout. The bailout has been interesting this year, and we've met with several barriers that we are working through. And so as of today, we've been able to free 2 mamas, one of them from a jail in Boone County, the Boone County Jail, and one of them from St. Louis. When Kaya got out of jail in St. Louis, she was immediately hit with 2 warrants in St. Clair County. And so we have taken care of those warrants and providing some aftercare to her right now. And so 2 people we have helped with their situations. There is another down at the Jackson County Detention Center who they will not release her, even though she can go as far as there being no money owed. They will not release her because she does not have a place to go to. She doesn't have a home. And so this is the other situation that we're coming up against where they are, because she doesn't have an address, they're going to hold her. You all know, I know all the community health workers who are listening in know how challenging it is to actually get housing for people. That's one of the most challenging things in this city is to get housing. We can get food, we can get people some medical, we can get a bunch of stuff, but housing is truly difficult. And so just wanted to let you all know that that is a barrier. Also, other things that we've seen more of is more trial conditions for people, trying to say that people need to wear an ankle monitor, which you all, if you aren't familiar, that's another system involved. The person has to pay for it. You have to pay to get it set up. You're essentially paying to surveil yourself. And these are people who are just leaving from being incarcerated. They don't have jobs. They don't have financial resources. They don't have much. And they're already being asked to do all of these things. So that's happening. We also know that the courts use RATs, is what we call them. We call them RATs. It's short for risk assessment tools. And so these risk assessment tools are completely biased. I mean, even one's address could be a detrimental factor on a risk assessment tool. Even prior mental health issues they deem you for on these risk assessment tools. And so in the world of bailouts and trying to bail people out, these are some of the things that we run up against. We are set to get a few other mamas out of jail, but that likely will not happen until sometime next week. We are actively working with our partners from the Louisville Bail Fund, Black Lives Matter Louisville, folks from the Vegas Fund and some others, just to support a mom that we are going to all be getting out of the St. Clair County Jail. She's a survivor, and we're going to help her with getting into a protective situation. So we're all coming together for that, and it's going to be really great to see some of my friends from around the country in a couple of days as we do that work together. But just let our Kansas City community know that's where we are on our bailout. I've got a young mom in Greene County that I'm hoping that we can get her out today. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to pan out. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I said earlier, we're going to really be leaning in on our community and asking for people to step up. Real Justice Network provides participatory defense for people we bail out, even, for other people. And so with our participatory defense work, if you all remember, we were supporting 2 students in Fayette, Missouri. If you all can remember, last year, there was a situation with a no-knock warrant, and the student, Christopher, they pulled a gun on him, completely terrorized them, and continued to do so even days and months after this false arrest. We were able to help Christopher out, get Christopher connected with an attorney, but also Torrance, their roommate, was attacked by police on Halloween night. They called me during this encounter, and let me tell you, it was one of the scariest things I've had to hear over the phone. Lots of screaming. Janice, Christopher's girlfriend, was there. Police pulled guns out on all of them. It was a really harrowing experience. Torrance got to testify about his experience in the state legislature. And so representatives in our capital got to hear what happened, and we're really, really interested in trying to see some justice happen there. Rod Chappell, who is the president of the NAACP in St. Louis, is helping a bit with this case. Kyler is the lead attorney on this case, and they both have told me that the courts in Fayette officials have been extremely discriminatory and racist. These are some things that we already knew, but we are going to be going to Fayette in June to support these students. Their court date is coming up on June 17th. And so please be on the lookout for some information. Some of our team is planning a protest rally action along with NAACP folks and some other groups around our state. Fayette, Missouri is a small town. It is rural, and it is predominantly white. They have a history of racist actions, and this whole, I don't know what you call it there. When I went there, I could feel it. I've been there, I've interviewed these young men, these students. They also play on the football team. They're very talented. And so there's a lot going on in this town, and we're going to need and want your support on. So just wanted to make sure that everybody had a bit of an update about that case. It's been nearly a year, and we are going to be raising money to pay for their legal defense. We want to make sure that their attorney on the case does get paid for their time. This is a really, really difficult case just because of the nature of this small town to kind of do what they want. But we're going to stand up. These young students, they've never been in trouble. I talked to Torrance earlier today. He said, Miss Justice, he says, I've been to Tennessee, I've been to Memphis, I've been all over the South, and I've never gotten in trouble anywhere until I came to Missouri. And so we want to make sure that they graduate without a ding on their record from being in our state. Are there any questions about anything happening with the bailouts or anything happening with this action that we're planning, for the Fayette students. All right, if something comes up, please just reach out to us and we'll respond. All right, so moving along, I believe we're going to do a bit of some breakout. Layla, do we have that ready?
Yeah, could you give me hosting privileges?
Yes.
Privileges. Hey y'all, how you doing? We've been talking for a while. Does everyone want to give like a word of how you're feeling in the chat or come off mute? I'm feeling sad about this news that Justice was talking about the Fayette students, but energized to take action. So just wondering how y'all are feeling. If you want to offer a word in the chat or come off mute. So quiet.
Hey y'all, this is Victor. I'm pronounced he, him, his. Yeah, it's a lot, and to be quite honest, sometimes this work can feel heavy, because like I don't know, it feels like we're on the fence the whole time. But I'm also feeling connected with like other folks in the work, so I appreciate the updates, the space to be with other folks. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Okay, maybe we're all feeling a little shy. I actually don't know if I can do breakouts, Justice.
Okay, and I was just going through, I actually think that we're kind of small enough to just kind of go through those questions. Let's just talk openly.
Yeah,
through the-
so the idea was we wanted to kind of talk about building relationships and center the fact that relationship building is central to this work. So although we have meetings and although work needs to be done, we can face a lot of burnout if we're just constantly going through agendas and business. And like, just now we got a lot of information. So one of the strategies that many movements use is the idea of relationships or relational organizing, which means that we want everyone's self-interest to come out and that we create relationships around that. And it's not that we need to know everyone's life story or we need to know every detail about each other, but we all need to see where our values align and uplift each other's self-interest, because there's nothing wrong with being here because you want the liberation for yourself or your people, or you care about a specific issue, one of the many issues that we went through last time, or anything like that. So we need to be able to see ourselves and our passions in this work. And the best way we can do that is if we come to know each other. So that's a little bit about that. And one of the questions we had was just, what brings you to this work? What brings you to the Kansas City People's Agenda? What brings you to this meeting today? Is it a relationship in the room? Is it a theme? I can say for me, it's the relationships in this room. And it's a chance to build solidarity with communities. Like, I'm new to Kansas City and I want to build the right relationships after being here for almost a year. And this is my intentional building for that. So that's me. Brianna, you said justice. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, Justice the person. And so yeah, Justice, and then I was getting ready to type some more. Justice the person was originally why I came to the first meeting, and then when I got here I see all these people I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's everybody. And so I'm here for all of y'all, and that's what brought me to this meeting. And then what brought me to this work is Okay, let me think how to say this rather succinctly. Lorenzo Irvin was a political prisoner, and he told me to go make a labor union for prisoners. And so I did that, and that's why I do that, because he told me to. That was a really short story.
Thank you. We'll have to hear more about that. And for anyone, as you hear people talk and you're like, I'd really like to learn more about that, don't hesitate to reach out for a one-on-one and say, hey, here's my email, let's set up a meeting. So Brianna, I'd love to talk to you more about that sometime. But anyone else have an answer to this question? What brings you to this work? My cold
think-
call. Oh, Victor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that what brings me to this work is Justice has brought this up like a few different times, like the need to actually have a centralized and like a hub for like all of the work that is happening in Kansas City, specifically work that is led by BIPOC folks. So it's very strategic, in my opinion, and it is very liberating at the same time. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Plus, like, who doesn't love like some like Black and brown joy? Like, I just love it. So yeah, thanks for the space.
Okay. What brings me to Kansas City People's Agenda is, of course, the work with Real Justice Network and the Red-Handed Warrior Society, which it works with, has been working with Black, Brown, and Native communities since it was formed as Standing Rock. But the reason why I'm with the Kansas City People's Agenda is to make sure that I'm staying with groups that's really in this work with that are dedicated to being ethical and actually doing the best work out here. And I want to make sure that we stay in contact with each other and I'm able to support everybody and we're all able to be a support system for each other, because it is difficult in the Kansas City area to actually be able to make sure that we're in the right circles and not get pulled out into the wrong ones. So.
Thank you. That's so true. While we have some time, I'd like to move
I
on
want to
to.
comment on that one
Oh,
too.
go ahead,
Claire.
Justice.
Yeah, so for me, this is really, really, really personal for me. Being an organizer in Kansas City for so long and seeing so many things, seeing so many groups come together and then something happens and they fizzle out, see groups be disorganized by other people. People come into organizing space sometimes, and I think because they saw something on TV, they saw people out there shouting Black Lives Matter and holding signs and looking and feeling really energetic, and they get an impression that, oh, organizing and activism, it's so great, it's so cool. And it is, it's great, it's cool. But it also is hard. And it also can be messy. It can be messy. It can be bad. And so with all that being said, trying to create a safe space for those of us who are really serious about the work was really important to me. Because while some folks are happy, and I mean happy, to go in a room and vote against our interests and stand in front of us like they're our friends, that shit happens so much. And I've seen it, and it's heartbreaking. And for people who put everything on the line, I mean, people who put everything on the line just to have that shit happen. So this is personal for me. I got kids I'm raising, and I want a better place for them to be in. I don't want my kids to get shot by the police. I want my children to be able to have any resource they need, whether it's they need to go to the doctor, they want to see an herbalist, they need mental health, whatever. It needs to be available, not just for me, for all of my siblings and for their children as well. And so while we have some great organizations in Kansas City, we're doing work over here in this silo, doing work over here in this silo. We are coming together. We are building, we are bridging, and we're not all on this call today. Some of our siblings had work to do and couldn't be here. But you will see people joining and coming, and you will see this space growing and growing and growing into the thing that it needs to be. But that is why I am here. That's why I have worked so hard. We have worked so hard. And we have it in us to do. We're looking at what's going on in St. Louis and how they've organized and how they've made gains. There's no reason why we can't do it here. And so I just wanted to share from the heart why this is really important to me.
Thank you so much, Justice. That was really real, and we need that centering, because groups come together and fall apart very fast. So that kind of leads us to the next question of what do you expect out of this space? And this is a time where we're trying to explore community agreements, trying to explore that level setting. So what are your expectations? Or what do you, in terms of like how we relate to each other?
Well, let's just, my expectations are, and I try my best not to expect too much out of people, but from our point of view, we're support, being a support system for each other and being able to help each other on things that we need. Like right now, Red Handed Warrior Society and we're doing our work with Real Justice Network with our domestic violence platforms. But then on, we also have some that we're working on with food insecurity, where we have Res Hood Trailer Park, where we're actually trying to get food, like food and from like harvesters and stuff like that, and bring them to these 3 areas. And we're having some issues because we're actually a real warrior society, and we're formed under the Apache tribe, which is in Texas, and we are registered as a tribal and charitable organization there, and that's actually federal. But harvesters, for some reason, doesn't seem to realize that natives move around the country. So we're having some issues trying to get that so that we can bring food to all the communities that we're serving. So I think that having space like this, and when we're able to get past that, then maybe we can be able to be a support system for someone else who's in here that may have to deal with that, like maybe Devin, or if some of his HIV patients are needing food or something like that. So I'm hoping that even the barriers that we're having to leap over can actually help someone else in this space also.
Thank you for that, Brandy. I think that really brings up a good point of like our networks should not just be something that we say that we have solidarity, but that should show up in spreading our material resources however we can and when we are able to. So thank you for centering that as well. Any other expectations? Could be something simple. I expect us all to respect each other and to respect each other's identities, and to, when we're speaking of an issue, things like HIV services and leadership, things like, food security in Indigenous communities, to center the people who are closest to that issue. So that's my expectation. Does anyone else have any?
There is a framework that a lot of my work, all of my work is built on, which is MIPA, which is meaningful involvement of people living with HIV. It comes from this document that you can actually Google, which is called the Denver Principles. And really what it says is that people living with HIV are to be involved in basically planning, implementation, and evaluation of all policy, programmatic, and funding decisions as it pertains to HIV. So it's like a set of like organizing principles. I don't think that's anything that needs to be codified here, but like just an awareness would be helpful. You're muted.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think internalizing those things into Evan, your knowledge and perspective on that, I would love to learn more about that. I think that goes into the multi-system solutions we're trying to uplift as well. So yeah, I'm gonna write that down. Anyone else? So I guess one of the last, does someone
Miss
unmute?
Brianna, because justice has been central to pulling this group together, I expect people to not be like vultures and like using people to make money or develop their brand or that sort of thing. I trust that, like 100% right off the bat, trust everyone's intentions here. And I expect everyone to have goodwill and good intentions, because this is an amazing group.
Word, that's very important. If you are here, again, self-interest is okay, but there's a limit, and one of those limits is transactional relationships, and the idea that you kind of expect some, I don't know, Brianna said it the best, so don't be a vulture. And a lot of the last questions is just based on some of these expectations we've been talking about: mutual support, not being transactional, coming here with goodwill, good intentions. What do you need to make these happen? So for me, that's like information sharing, and we're still working that out, but making sure we have solid information sharing. I can't support you if you don't tell me where the support is needed, right? So it's a two-way street. So communication is really important to me. What about y'all? What do you need to make these expectations a reality and make them happen? Any folks who've been quiet? I might have to cold call you. Justin, Anna, Beyond, Asia.
I mean, I was just thinking, I mean, something I was going to offer is, I think, kind of even to the first question, like I personally feel like Black and people of color led multiracial coalition is critically important for us to win things all of our communities need to have a dignified life. And I think that also requires that we be in commitment. You mentioned not doing transactional relationships lately. I think living into relationships that are reciprocal and transparent and long term. And I would offer that I think that also means we have to have a commitment to really wrestle with each other. And that it is okay. Like part of being an authentic relationship is being able to wrestle with each other and lean into tension and lean into conflict, and know that that's actually not a weakness. is not something that should drive us further apart. It actually has the potential to bring us closer together. So, and I think that has a lot to do with just to me, it feels like just being in an authentic relationship means that I'm gonna hang, like, even if it's hard, I'm gonna stick with it.
Oh, having been voluntold. And I think, but to Justin's point, I've done a lot of marshaling and action support via Surge. And I think because of that, it can be kind of transactional, almost on purpose sometimes. They need us to show up for a particular reason, but it means that there are a lot of people in this call who I've seen in passing, but I haven't built a one-on-one relationship with, because we kind of like show up and then we leave and then go do our work in another space. So this is my first meeting of you guys I've been to. So I've just been really appreciating the opportunity to listen to what's going on, what's important, the language that everyone is using, the priorities, the methods. So I just really appreciate having this space where I can come in and be witness to this and then think about how to bring it back, and then as well, how to bring forward stuff that we're working on and just be aware of what's going on, not only in Kansas City, but to Justice's point earlier, what's happening in Missouri and beyond.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. Yeah, also nice jacket. So we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna give you all an opportunity of maybe if just a couple minutes. I want you to find someone in this room, and I want you to reach out to them either in a direct message or find them on Facebook and add them. And I'm gonna give you that time right now in the next 3 minutes to just be like, hey, even if it's just making a note, here's my phone number, here's my email, message me and let's set up a one-on-one. So I'm gonna do that right now. So we're gonna do that right now, everyone.
I'd like to add Devin, because I actually have something that I think he probably like. I don't have his
Oh, I add my
okay.
You can DM. I DM somebody, so I hope we'll be able to meet. Layla, before you close us out, I do have one announcement that I want to make for people. Well, two. Don't forget about the poetry slam tonight if you can make it. Please share that. Also, and it's virtual. And also, I'm going to drop a link to an opportunity. Let's see. Let me make sure everybody gets it. So, Deb mentioned just a little bit about sex work. There's a coalition in KC in Missouri, MoHo Justice Coalition, that is really doing some great work to decrim sex work and really have an impact on the lives of sex workers, to demystify some of the bias around that. And so the coalition is having a boot camp to teach all kinds of wonderful skills. They are actually paying people like $600, something like that. So if you're interested, I know that there are 12 available slots. please fill out the info if you're interested, and you might get selected for that boot camp. Trust me, you're going to learn a lot. There are going to be some amazing presenters in that boot camp, which is led by my colleague J. Marie Hill. So if you're interested in that, or if you think somebody else is, please pass that opportunity along to them. And if you have any questions about it, go ahead and reach out to me and I can answer them. You all, this brings us to the end of this month's meeting. We're going to do this again next month, same time. It's every second Saturday at 1. We'll go to either somewhere between 2:15 to 2:30. Just depends on what we're doing. But please, please, please support all the stuff that we mentioned today, and do something for your mama, or for a caregiver, or for somebody who has looked after you. The big day is tomorrow, but we celebrate mamas and caregivers all year long. But make sure you do something special tomorrow. All right, you all, that's all we have. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, peace.
Hi, y'all.